Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness gracious, it's time. It's time for some more Citizen Sleeper. Hello, everybody. I'm very excited. Can you tell? Can you tell by the face? It's going to be exciting. We're going to play episode Purge out now. The final DLC episode for Citizen Sleeper. And we're going to pick up where we left off with this load. That's my excited stance? We'll say stance. Peak is compiling their data on the flux to be presented to Saul or Helene. You get the sense they are dreading the choice. So I'm not really doing anything at the moment. I need to wait. I need to wait for things to actually happen. That did fill up a tick, correct? Yes, okay. Let's get some spores. Some beautiful spores. Dice swap is still gone. They didn't revert it back in. My favorite glitch that I've discovered did not come back in. Sleeper. Peak is waiting for you in the corridor. It's time. Peak looks pale and disheveled, with heavy marks under their eyes and strands of hair sticking to their face. I'm ready. Peak holds up a thumbnail-sized drive. All the data I have compiled on the flux event, the effects of the wave, and the structures that hide within it, is on here. You look at the tiny drive, a casket of dark secrets. I've annotated it to the best of my ability. Anyone should be able to understand the threat, the potential in this. Peak sighs. It makes for grim reading. Without intervention, the eye will suffer a cascading collapse of systems, just like the colonies of Ember's moons. You're sure? Peak grimaces. As I can be. The evidence all points in one direction. Peak looks at the drive. This shadow in the flux, this protocol, is so hard to pin down. It adapts to any countermeasure I have tried to deploy. It is like trying to hold water in a cage. It slips right through. Straight through. You must keep looking. Peak closes their hand around the drive. We need help, Sleeper. This is about everyone on the station. They sigh. We have to set up a meeting to tell someone who can do something about this. Helene. It is Helene. Perhaps. Peak pauses. If anyone can protect the eye, it's Havenage, but their internal politics will make it hard for them to act. Will they even listen to us? Or perhaps, Peak adds thoughtfully, we've been thinking about this all wrong. Peak's eyes glint. Why make a choice when we can tell both of them? Why pick a side when the only side in the entire thing is one we all need to take? Peak speaks as they think, their words barely keeping pace with their thoughts. We need to resist this together, or we will fail. We need everyone to be on board, Sleeper. Peak smiles. That is the only way. We send the data to both. You're right. Peak smiles. I'm glad you see it too. They look away. Another flux event is coming. I'm sure of it. I'm not sure we could survive without help. Peak opens their hand and holds the drive out for you to take. You need to take this, Sleeper. To do this. I can't. You know Saul, you know Helene, they trust you. To them, I'm just another spacer, but you are part of this place. Hearing someone else say it hits you hard. You are a part of the Eye. Peak is right, but right now that feels more like a weakness than a strength. I have set up a data relay at the cordon. It's neutral ground. Take the data and send it out to Havenage and the flotilla. Once they receive it, they will come. We can be sure of that. You will meet them there and take them through it all. No one could do a better job. They tuck a strand of hair behind their ear. Come with me. Peak pauses. I can't. It would only draw suspicion to you. Havenage wants nothing to do with us, and Saul is paranoid at best. Peak tentatively puts a hand on your shoulder. Thank you, Sleeper. I know this is hard, but we have to move forward. We can't keep this to ourselves anymore. They step back, looking thin and pale in the harsh station light. Come talk to me once it's done. And they slip away into the Eye. I thought it was going to be there. Is it here? After this point, you will not be able to return to complete other drives or find other endings. Yeah, I'm ready. With the data sent, the only thing to do is wait. As you do, you imagined Helene receiving the data, perhaps in the middle of some Havenage Council meeting. You think of her trembling hands as she slips out of the room to read it. Her reaction you can't predict. You imagine Saul, too, one of his crew finding him in some corner of the Pilgrim Seed, overseeing the modifications that will turn it into an ark. Those sharp eyes scanning the data, looking for a way to proceed. The wait draws out, and to pass the time you watch the activity beyond the edge of the Eye. The scrap shuttles pulling components from the now abandoned cordon, and the supply skiffs making runs between the flotilla ships. It isn't long before you hear the chirping of one of Helene's now familiar drones. Now familiar drones approaching the viewing platform, and then Helene herself strides into the room. Where did you get this, Sleeper? Helene holds up a slate scrolling with streams of flux data as she enters. I need to know your source. Hello to you too. You didn't bring me here for a reunion, I assume. Helene smiles a thin smile. Then you'll forgive me for skipping the pleasantries. She pauses and pushes her hair back out of her face. This is a lot to take in. A shadow protocol inside the flux. The system's CAN channels starting up. A total collapse of the Eye. She rubs her forehead. If I bring this to the council, they'll... She turns away. They'll ignore you. She turns back to face you, her expression dark. Do you know what's happening? What has been happening within Havenage, Sleeper? She looks away out at the flotilla. Since the refugee ships started arriving, things have changed. It's chaos. No one can settle on a single issue. There's division at every vote. But in the division, only one group prospers. The hardliners. Because as each counselor gets tired of the arguments, gets tired of compromise, they become attracted to the easy answers. The flotilla is to blame. The refugees are opportunists. The Eye must be defended, she shakes her head. And now you're telling me that they brought something to the Eye that will cause its collapse. The Eye should be defended. But what does that mean, Sleeper? Helene glares. You're telling me the threat is intangible, a shadow, a formless protocol. How can we defend ourselves from that? But the refugees, they are all too tangible. And that is what will draw the council's focus. She closes her eyes, a hand to her temple. Did someone say refugees? Saul clanks into the docking bay, grinning at the situation. Speak of the devil, and, well, here I am. His suit hisses as he settles on his cane. Helene glances between the two of you, uncertain if she has been drawn into some elaborate plan. Saul hands out a hand to her. Saul, he nods. I believe we have spoken remotely while the cordon was still up. We are all allies here. Saul raises an eyebrow. That seems a little presumptuous, doesn't it? I trust you, Sleeper, but Havenage have been the ones seeking to hold us without charge or good reason. I'm not Havenage, Helene blurts out, then corrects herself. What I mean to say is no one person represents Havenage. That's the idea. I did not support the cordon, and I did not support your quarantine. Saul nods. Well then, Saul glances at you. Anyone mind if I get myself up to speed here? He pauses, but you get the feeling he isn't expecting an answer. 1. The flux events, the very same destabilizing waves that collapsed the colonies on the moons of Ember, have reached the station. He holds up a stubby finger. 2. According to data Sleeper provided, these events are acting as a cover for some kind of intrusive protocol which is causing the real damage. A second finger joins the first. 3. This shadow protocol will do the very same thing it did to Ember's song. Step and hearth. And quickly. In short, it'll shut down everything keeping this place alive. A third finger pops up. 4. And this is my favorite. We have no idea who or what is doing this. And why. Saul's final finger joins the other 3. Is that about the total of it all? There's also another flux event coming. Of course there is. Saul smiles thinly. Sounds... Helene pauses, searching for words. Intimidating. Helene turns to Saul. Did you manage to put up any kind of resistance on Ember's hearth? Saul shakes his head. That's why we are here. The Pilgrim Seed was the biggest ship to make it out unscathed. He pauses. I suppose we didn't have this data. We didn't know what was eating up the systems. We all thought it was the flux. Helene looks at you. And I imagine you, Sleeper, and whoever helped you uncover this, might be able to figure out a countermeasure? I don't know. Helene glances away. That's okay. We can try. If you'll forgive me, Saul cuts in. Part of why I was able to save as many as I could on Ember's hearth was that I gave up hope early. Saul shifts his weight, his suit hissing. There were endless strategy meets, system reboots, tests, and trials, but I just got on with working on the Pilgrim Seed, with getting people on board. So when the second and the third and the rest of the flux events hit, we were ready to go. So, if I can offer you some advice, Miss Not Havenage, it is to give up on that line of thought you have, that hope, and to start the evacuation now, right this cycle. Saul looks out on the observation deck, towards the Pilgrim Seed. I've already started the process of converting the remaining volume of the Pilgrim Seed for human habitation. With Havanage's resources, I dare say we could finish the job with time to spare. Saul scratches at his beard. I know it's hard, and I know it's sudden, but you have to give up hope. We have to run. There will be no heroes here. Just those that keep living, and those that don't. Helene listens in silence, making calculations. She looks out at the bulk of the Pilgrim Seed, which, despite all its vastness, is dwarfed by the eye as a whole. Something flickers in her eyes. She opens her mouth to speak. She stops, frozen. Let me think. Helene rubs her temple. I need a moment. Helene paces, and as you watch her, you realize how young she is, and how lost she is in the systems and protocols she has to navigate. You can almost see the strings and ties that bind her, glinting like webs in the wide space of the observation platform. We purged the Shadow Protocol. Helene stops pacing. But with what resources? The data you sent me, this thing is a shadow, uncontrollable, untraceable. Perhaps with a full contingent of the Havenage Systems Department, but that would require hundreds of work orders to be overlooked, maintenance schedules abandoned. She looks away. Getting that through the Council. Would that even be possible? She glances at Saul, who is patiently waiting. Patiently watching, patiently listening. We do it without them. Impossible. Helene looks at the slate again. I will take this to the Council, force them to listen. Force them to act. You both jump as someone loudly clears their throat nearby. Your eyes jump to the dark entryway that Helene emerged from just minutes ago. What a cozy little meeting this is. A man steps from the shadows, dressed in the same style of Havenage overalls as Helene. And I must say, that is some very incendiary rhetoric that you are using, Counselor Helene. Hi, Kemp. You glance at Helene, and her face drops immediately. Kemp. She curses under her breath. Saul shifts his weight on his cane, but otherwise remains still, like a casual observer. Plotting against Havenage with an interloper, he gestures at Saul. Everyone will be so disappointed. Kemp smiles a bright smile. Some of the counselors had such high hopes for our youngest member. His smile drops. I, of course, never let novelty distract from the importance of experience. Helene stares daggers at Kemp. Enough of this petty shit, Kemp. You need to see this. She holds out her slate with an outstretched arm. The games are over. No more point scoring, no more lobbying. You and your Harlanders need to stop. This is something real. Kemp calmly takes the slate and prods the screen, scrolling through the flux data. His face betrays nothing, but you see some complex calculation flickering in his sharp eyes. Kemp lowers the slate slowly and smiles at Helene. And what do you think this shows? Oh, I hate this guy. Helene frowns. Don't play games. You can read. The flux is a carrier signal for some shadow protocol, most likely corporate in nature. Maybe it's Solheim re-emerging to claim their station. Maybe it's a takeover. But either way, the station is under threat. You're right about that. But the rest? Conjecture. Kemp rubs their chin. What we have is a virus in our systems which emerged precisely when the flotilla arrived. In fact, it times in perfectly with the mysterious event that freed them. So what I see is a hostile cyber warfare attack, instigated by dissidents that fled Ember's moons after committing terrorist attacks on their own soil. Kemp's face darkens. That is the order of the facts. Nothing more and nothing less. Facts I'll be happy to present to the Council. Kemp tightens his grip on the slate. Helene laughs. You think that's the only copy of that data, you sanctimonious shit? No, I don't. Kemp smiles. But who do you think they will listen to, Helene? Especially after I tell everyone about this clandestine little meeting. You could have won by Havenage Systems by our laws, so you resort to this. Kemp shakes his head. The law is with me. It's as simple as that. He gestures, and out of the shadows, 2 Havenage security officers appear. Now, no need for that, Saul suddenly speaks up. His silence had meant Kemp stopped paying attention to him, but now you notice he has backup of his own. A group of his crew stand at the edge of the room. They are carrying long, boxy guns. You've never seen anything like them on the eye. Glossy XPR logos glint along their barrels. These are Esh's guns. There they are! There they are! Saul, you old son of a gun. Get it? Kemp freezes, and the officers hesitate, holding back in the doorway. Be careful there, outsider, he stutters. Kill me, and Havenage will never forget. Saul waves a hand at him. No one is killing anyone. So let's calm down. Saul scratches his beard. But I am going to have to ask you to leave. Helene glances at him, and he gives her a gentle nod. And you'll leave your colleague here with me. He raises an eyebrow. We haven't finished our conversation. Kemp laughs and shakes his head. You are finished, Helene. The council will never allow you back after this. Then he turns and walks out of the observation deck, taking his officers with him. You all pause to catch your breath. Helene looks ready to collapse. Saul flexes inside his suit, nodding at his crew to check that Kemp has fully retreated. Saul wrenches part of his suit back into place, grimacing. Your friends leave a lot to be desired. He shoots a glance at Helene. Seems like support for the evacuation might be a hard ask. Helene doesn't respond. She stares out at the pilgrim seed once more, trying to process what is in front of her. She sighs and turns back to you, both. I won't call for an evacuation, she looks at Saul. Maybe that is a fatal mistake, but I can't do it. I understand. But, she pauses, I won't block it either. If people want to leave, Havenage will let them. That is what I will propose to the council, she sighs, if they let me speak. You have to try. She nods at you and Saul and turns to leave. Saul is quiet. He scratches at his beard. Good luck, he offers to the departing Helene, but she does not respond. He leans on his cane. I'll be honest with you, Sleeper, none of this changes anything for me. The Pilgrim Seed will be going in a handful of cycles, whether Havenage wants it or not. How long? Saul grimaces. Honestly, as soon as we are ready. I'm not eager to run down the clock to the last cycle. Saul puts a hand on your shoulder. There's a berth for you, and for any you can gather, Sleeper. That much I owe you. And Helene? I wouldn't hold out much hope of her coming around, Sleeper. She's too tied up in all this. It won't let her leave, even if she wants to. He eyes you. Hell, I'd say the same about you, but you have a habit of proving me wrong. My crew will take me from here. Don't you worry. Saul straightens up. Oh, and thank you, Sleeper, for sending the data. I appreciate the extra info, and I'll see if it can help sure up the Pilgrim Seed against any future flux events. If we had you back on Ember's hearth... He pauses, suddenly losing his appetite for discussing the past. Saul sighs. Of course, we are going to need all the help we can get. If you can spare some time, come to the Pilgrim Seed. Help me get it ready. Bring others. There's a future to be earned here, cycle by cycle. We'll be leaving as soon as we are able. If you want to help us get there faster, well, you'd be welcome. He meets your eye. Saul grimaces. Well, he pauses. Just don't keep me waiting. And he limps off towards his waiting crew. You pause for a moment to let your thoughts catch up. Peak will want to hear all about this. They should be your first port of call. Need to rest the voice a little bit. Need to rest it a little bit after all that talking. Start with the Dr. Pepper. Okay. As you enter the climbing briar, you immediately have to jump aside as Esh, lugging a massive crate across the cargo bay, pushes past you, grunting an apology as she does. Grunt back. Esh doesn't look back. As you turn back to the bay, Peak pushes past you. Sorry, Sleeper, just a second. Peak rushes to catch up with Esh. Put that down, please, Esh. She doesn't respond to his urging. We can't leave, not yet. Peak puts a hand on her shoulder. Please, I'm the only one here who can... The crate drops, the sound of its impact echoing across the bay like thunder. Can do what, Peak? Her eyes are burning with anger. Save this place? Are you still that naive? We are running, Peak. We are running because this thing cannot be stopped. It couldn't be stopped by XPR, our home. Why would we stay to stop it here? Because we can, Esh. We can give these people a chance. Peek pleads with her. Like they gave the refugees a chance? Esh shakes her head. No, Peek. This is not on us. We barely made it out of XPR. I worked for years to escape, and now you want to throw it all away? I left everything behind. My mother, my friends, to take you out of that place. She clenches her jaw. She turns and slams her hand onto the crate, breathing hard. We go. That's the end of it. Peek turns away. You feel unsure what to do, but you know now is not the time for outside arguments. This is between them. Peek crosses the bay back towards you. I'm sorry you had to see that, Sleeper, they sigh. Let's talk upstairs. Peek leads you to the entry ladder, taking you up out of the bay and into the habitation level of the ship. You follow them through the tight corridors, noticing the handwritten notes, the clutter, the repairs, the signs of a home. Here, sit. Peek gestures to the broad mess table with its curved couches, and you slide in one side. Peek sits opposite. They brush their hair out of their eyes and take a deep breath. So, how did it go? What did they say? I've been waiting all cycle. There's a dude who sucks. Peek looks increasingly troubled as you tell them about the hardline counselor Kemp's sudden appearance. Damn. Then Helene's going to have problems of her own to deal with. Peek shakes their head. Looks like we won't be able to count on anything from Havenage. They pause. What stopped Kemp from arresting her? Well, there were guns. Peek rolls her eyes. Of course. Those are the guns Esh managed to smuggle through to the refugees, the ones she didn't tell us about. Peek sighs. Another thing that's on us. What's on us? Esh is standing quietly in the doorway listening. You don't know how long she's been there for. Peek looks up at her with tired eyes. Sleeper found the weapons you smuggled from XPR. Esh freezes. She glances between you and Peek as if this might be some kind of elaborate joke. The flotilla used them? Esh moves out of the doorway and enters the room. What happened? Peek interrupts. Be thankful that they didn't. They used them as a threat, that is all. Good. Esh folds her arms. You get the feeling that she knows Peek will not approve. Peek goes to speak, and then decides not to take the bait. They glance at you. I'm sure you've heard enough of us arguing the cycle, Sleeper. Peek shoots a look at Esh. But our introduction of those weapons into the equation are just another reason why we cannot simply run away. Esh looks away, but says nothing. She surely knows they cannot absolve themselves of responsibility here, so what is motivating her? You realize that she still might be trying to protect Peek, even from themselves. Suddenly a shrill beeping fills the room, and Peek pulls out their slate to silence it. But as they do, they freeze, their finger hovering above the screen, the beeping continuing its insistent pulse. Peek doesn't seem to hear you. They blink with glazed eyes at the slate. Then they let out a long exhale and tap the screen. The bleeping shuts off, leaving a ringing silence behind. Esh frowns at Peek, planning to explain. 12 cycles. Peek looks vacantly up at you both. 12 cycles until the next flux event. They shake their head. I've been using the arrays on the Briar to look towards the center of the system to approximate when the CAN channel should be. Where the CAN channel should be. Just this moment they detected a signal from the inner system. Given the distance and pattern of previous flux events, we have 12 cycles before it reaches the eye. The silence in the room is deafening. 12 cycles. That's it. Before a second wave hits in this place, Peek interrupts your thoughts. We stand now. We start now. That's the end of it. Peek stands up to face Esh. You want to take the Briar and run, Esh? That's on you. But I won't do it. They take a deep breath. I'll be here, Sleeper, for every cycle it takes, trying to find a solution. I'll need your help. Their eyes meet yours, and you see a wild desperation flickering there. We will find something. The sooner we have a plan, the better. If it takes us 12 cycles to finish this thing, It'll be too late. Peak's eyes flash with determination. They reach for a slate and pass it to you. So we can keep in touch. You pocket the thin, handheld terminal. And Ash! Peak starts, but she is gone, storming down the corridors of the ship on a path to who knows where. You know from experience that it is impossible to outrun your fears, but you get a sense that Ash will try anyway. Peak rubs their red eyes, staring after Ash. Maybe I'll take a moment before we start. They smile weakly, tears of exhaustion gathering in their eyes. See you back here soon, okay? And you slip from the room into the corridor. Peak's quiet sobs somehow carrying through the ship behind you as you leave. Woof. No time for rest. Peak beckons you over to the wide mess table where they have set up a terminal. The hours of bleary-eyed work have left you both drained, and Peak looks ready to collapse. You slide onto the curved couch beside them, something dark and malevolent filling their screen like an oil stain. I'm sick of looking at this thing. Look again. Peak's eyes seem to glitter in the screen light. This isn't what you think, Sleeper. Not by a long shot. You look again at the screen, leaning in close to the dark, curved shape to see its texture. You see whorls and currents like a river, a dark flow under the Shadow's protocols. Dark tangle. You know exactly what this is. You have swum in this river, almost drowned in its shifting flow. It is the Gardener's Chorus, the dark cloud which blankets the Greenway's networks. The bioorganic morass of a malfunctioning protocol grown vast and strange. I know this place. Peak glances at you. I thought you might have seen it, covering the Greenway like a shroud. Peak meets your eye. Everything I have tried to do to contain the Shadow Protocol has been a failure. It slips through any containment, absorbs any countermeasure. That, unfortunately, is an unavoidable fact. And yet the eye still spins. The Shadow Protocol is being slowed, partially contained. It is spread across the station, as we have seen, but in reduced pockets, in fragments. So I started to look outside of our test cases. Outside of these fragments, we have been poking and prodding in our little lab. Peak smiles. And look what I found. Peak taps a key on their terminal, and you realize the screen is showing a recording of the data flow inside the eye's networks, sampled from hundreds of points around the Greenway. You watch as a subtle shift occurs at the edge of the floating dark curve that blankets the Greenway. Something spreading like an ink stain. Somehow darker than black, it bleeds across. The Shadow Protocol. Now watch. Peak eagerly points at the screen. You see something strange, a fizzing at the edge of the shadow, a sparking, and then it is gone. And beneath for a moment, a millisecond, you see into the networks of the Greenway. You are reminded of an image you had forgotten, of pulling a plant from its pot and seeing a bone, white root ball where you expected to see dark soil. The white connections writhe like worms. And then it is gone, the dark flow closing up as quickly as it opened. It dissolved the shadow. Exactly, Peak nods. It protected itself. You think back to your meeting with the gardener, to that sense of something old and world, and inhuman to its core. Peak excitedly starts to explain. This is the only chance we have, the only countermeasure we have seen. In the moment it opened, I detected something, a centralized intelligence with the local ID Gardener. This protocol, this system, whatever it is, can protect its network from the Shadow Protocol. But if it stays in the Greenway, the eye will still fall. The station's systems are too exposed, too spread across the hub, the shipyards, its spokes. Peak glances away. The only way is to break it open, to spread the entity's network. The only way is to break it open, to spread the entity's network, access it, expand it somehow. Peak pauses. I've been inside there, Peak. Peak pauses, trying to read your expression. And this gardener, can they help us? You try to remember what that strange being said to you, but all you remember is the feeling of dissolving into the network, and the heady mix of growth and decay, the ceaselessness of it. Would they protect the station? Or would they simply dissolve it? They might. Peak stands up and walks away a little. They lean against the countertop, their head hanging so low that their long hair touches the work surface. You hear them breathing deeply. I don't know, Sleeper. They lift their head. I really don't know. It's a chance. Maybe. They shake their head. You know as well as Peak that this is it. You know because over the past cycles you have run every simulation, every possibility you could think of, and still come up with nothing. You have stared a hole into your screen and dreamt of that black shadow creeping in at the edges of your vision. Peak recognizes the look in your eyes, the potent cocktail of resignation and anger. Let's say we do this, Peak begins, eyeing you carefully. What do we need? They begin to answer their own question, thinking out loud. I suppose we need to do two things. Find a way to limit or control the gardener's spread, and then reconnect the Greenway. Peak starts pacing. The idea is coming quickly now. Controlling the spread means preparing the station. Limit the gardener's network to key systems. We don't want it taking everything. We just need it to protect the station's core functionality. Then, we need to reconnect the Greenway. Hook it back up to the main line of the network. Those systems we prepared, they should connect, and Gardner will spread along the paths we prepared. At least that is my theory, Peak grimaces. But if we don't prepare correctly, the gardener might not spread. Or it might spread to everything. Peak closes their eyes. And after that, things might get worse. That's the risk. Peak nods. One hell of a risk. Peak sits back at the terminal and brings up a map of the eye. Rotational control at the hub. Life support at the free spoke. Power routing at the Havenage shipyards. They stab at the map, with each one, marking them in red. Then there's the central core. As I understand, it is somewhere on the rim. I need to find it. They push their hair out of their face. We see the gardener in all these places. Peak paused. But how are we going to do that? Transplant the Greenway. Peak smiles. Of course. The gardener needs plants to care for. That is what the protocol dictates. They must have been part of the farming management systems of the Eye, back when Solheim built it. We seed Greenway plants into those systems, and the gardener will seek it out. Protect them. Peak stares at the map of the Eye. It's a wild idea, but it could work. But, they pause, we'll need a way into those systems. Havenage have most of them locked down for safety purposes. We can't just walk in. I know a guy. Peak raises an eyebrow. Someone in the Havenage systems team? You nod. After everything he dragged you through, you feel like Fang still owes you. Yeah, Fang. Time to pay him a visit. Okay, well, Peak looks at you sideways. I guess we should pay him a visit. Lead the way. You both leave the ship, carried forward by the excitement of the plan, and an eagerness to not look at the details too closely. You push any lingering questions to the back of your mind. Time to head for Fang's Bay. It's going to be way down south. Fang is both never where they say they'll be and always late. All this is now a surprise. Now is not the time for wasting time. Can I upgrade my Intuit to make these 6s? No, 2 is the max. Okay. Gotta feed the stray. Do a self-repair. Oh, oh, there we go. All right, Fang. All right, Fang. You dig around Fang's bay and find some notes that mention the flux. What is he working on? That's it, no more wasting time, Peek sighs and pulls out their slate. They crack open a box on the side of the bay shutter and wire the slate to what's inside. Maybe your friend has a Havenage pass card or something inside. Peek shoots you a glance. Something they wouldn't mind if we borrow. Fine, but be quick. Peek nods without looking up. I'm going as quick as I can. After a few tense moments, the shutter jerks and begins grinding open, the noise making you jump. Let's get inside. Peek glances around. Quickly. You slip into the dark of the bay, punctuated by the blinking lights of Fang's piles of servers, somehow even more disordered than before. Peek makes a beeline for the desk at the center, scattered with tools and components. They flick on a lamp and stare at the mess. Are you sure this person can help us? Yes. You're interrupted by the sound of footsteps from behind you. From the entrance. Someone has come in behind you. Peek freezes. I could swear I closed the shutter when I left. Fang leans on a stack of servers near the entrance. Must be getting forgetful. He grins at you. Sloppy. I'm the one who makes the jokes, Sleeper. Fang smiles. Don't start. Fang raises an eyebrow. Thought you'd come rob an old friend. Is that the plan? We need your help. Fang nods. You're here about the flux. Peek nods and suddenly giving Fang their full attention. Fang smiles, pleased with himself. I guessed as much. I saw changes in the old system architectures almost immediately. Some of them have been running since the first days of the station, so when I saw new patterns, shifts in logic, I knew something must have happened. These past cycles, I've been doing a total inventory of the core systems, from the hub to the rim. He grins. I've surprised myself, to be honest. I didn't think I had it in me. Peek seems unamused. And what did you find? Fang sighs. That's the thing. There's something all twisted up in the systems and protocols, but every time I look at it, it disappears, Peek finishes. Fang turns to you. Do they always do that? Peek ignores him. It's a shadow protocol. It masks itself somehow, bedding into the gaps between the systems, in the negative space. It is slowly filling every system in the station, slowly taking over, and we need to stop it. You need to grant us access to all the core systems of the station. Rotational control, life support. Fang holds up a hand. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Slow down there. I don't even know your name. Fang shakes his head. And you're asking for the keys to the castle? Can't be done. Fang, it's me. Fang pauses and glances between both of you. And how long have you known this one, Sleeper? To know I owe you. I know I owe you, but I also know that you trust too easily. Sorry to say it. Peek cuts in. I can vouch for myself. I came to the Eye on the run from the XPR colony Hawthorne with the intent to keep running until we hit the starboard belt. But since I've been here, I have done everything in my power to protect this place. I have helped to stabilize the refugee flotilla, to investigate the flux, to identify and make a plan to purge the Shadow Protocol from the station's systems. Meanwhile, Havenage has done everything to stop and slow these actions. I have proven myself a friend to the people of the station, not the administration, many times over, and I will not be doubted by someone who wears the badge of this corrupt administration. Peek fixes Fang with a hard look. Fang looks down at their Havenage jacket and shrugs. This is all I have in my wardrobe. Look, I have no love for the council either, friend. But someone has to run this place, and that someone is me. Fang walks over to the workbench where you are both standing and digs a slate out of the pile of tools. You want to prove yourself? Show me. Peek grabs the slate, and you recognize the tangled form of a fluxed node on the screen. Peek immediately starts tapping away at it, its tendrils unwinding, and the shadow just slightly delayed slipping out of sight. Fang leans in. Interesting, he says to himself. Before long, Peek has unfolded the system completely, and it lies splayed out like an unwound ball of string. At the center, with nowhere left to hide, is the dark stain of the Shadow Protocol, visible for all to see. What now? Fang asks, his eyes fixed on the screen. How do you kill it? That's why we're here. Fang looks intrigued. Go on. There's one entity on the station that we have seen purging the shadow. The Gardener. Fang frowns. Who's that? Some Greenway hacker? Peek glances at you. More like an avatar of the Greenway itself. You explain the Gardener to Fang, the feeling of descending into the flowing river of consciousness. You explain the networked chorus, the non-human collective of voices. You tell him of the farming AI's offer to you to be networked into the chorus, dissolved into its flow. Then you explain that by granting it access to the AI's major networks, you hope to reinforce them. Fang is silent for a moment. And you want to let this thing out? He shakes his head. That's the kind of stupid plan I'd dream up. He pauses. I like it, he smiles. This place is rammed with weird protocols and forgotten intelligences anyway. What's one more ghost in the machine? We tried to limit it, of course, Peek explains. That's why we want your help to access the AI's major systems, to seed some of the Gardener's spores into them, to draw the Gardener's focus to those places. Fang whistles. So the way we save the eye is by growing mushrooms in all the server stacks? He glances at you. Sleeper? Congratulations, you found someone weirder than you. Peek goes to argue, but Fang holds up a hand. In it is an All Systems Havenage pass card with his picture on it. Take it before I change my mind. That's it? That's it. Fang gives you a look. In all honesty, Sleeper, I was on my way back here to start tearing the place down. The Shadow Protocol had me spooked. So if you're telling me you have figured out a way we might fight it, he looks at Peek, no matter how crazy, then I'm glad to help. He smiles a tight smile. Come with us. No, Sleeper. He looks away. I have to keep on with my work here. Strengthen these systems. Back up the data. The worst comes to the worst, I'll need to rebuild. I won't let this place die. The last pieces of my parents are here among the data. Goodbye, Fang. Fang embraces you firmly. Stay safe, Sleeper. You take the card and leave the bay with Peek. Once you are outside, they stop you. We should split up. Peek looks worried. We've wasted enough time as it is. Head to the facilities in the hub, the Free Spoke, and the far side of the shipyard. Seed the Gardener there. I'm going to go find the core control center that's somewhere on the rim. They hold up their slate. I'll send you a message on your slate when I have something. Good luck. They squeeze your shoulder, and you exchange fearful looks. You know deep down that Peek isn't sure that this will work, but they have decided to act, to move with confidence. And for that confidence, you are very thankful. I need so many of these beautiful spores. Okay, I need one more spore. More spore. More spore. Here? No, that's just mushroom. groves. Okay. As you leave, the slate peak gave you chirps insistently. You check and see a message. Found a possible entry to the core facility in the low end. Meet me here ASAP. Peak. A blinking marker gives their position as on the free spoke side of the main block. Better head to the low end. I can enunciate. You arrive at the coordinates given by Peak's slate, a rundown but active corner of the low end, where a short glass-roofed alley turns off from one of the main thoroughfares. You wait in the mouth of the alley, leaning against the wall and watching the street life go by. Children hop across grids scratched into metal floor plates, playing games of their own devising, while older residents sit and talk or play tavla. It is hard to believe that all this is at threat. It seems so concrete, so real. How can some intangible protocol erase all this? As you are watching, a voice calls out to you from one of the tavla tables set up along the way. You move a little closer and recognize the sitting player immediately. Castor sits, tavla pieces and board ready in front of him, smiling at you. Sleeper, my partner has not arrived for our usual game. Come, please, take her place. He beckons you over, standing and nudging you to sit down with him. A rematch is in order. You owe me a game. Almost immediately, Castor begins the game. Everyone on the eye knows how to play tavla, the methodical movement of counters across the triangular points, a ready fit for the rhythm of life on the ramshackle space station. Most games begin the same way, with each player moving with independence, focused on achieving their optimal early game setup. But there is a moment in each game where it becomes necessary to notice the other player, to anticipate the crossing of the counters across the board. A point of contact, where routine becomes negotiation, and negotiation becomes conflict. As this movement arrives, this subtle shift in the texture of the interaction, Castor begins to speak. I find myself surprised by you continually, Sleeper. He looks over his glasses at you. The way you conduct yourself, for example, suggests an anxious refrain, a defensive, protective quality. But in your tavla game, he pauses to move a counter. I see only risk. Stay silent. Risk is, of course, necessary to play tavla. To move a piece is to expose it, but it should be done with calculation, with proper analysis. Then, if the piece is taken, Castor moves a counter, taking one of yours with a practice swap, placing it behind the board. It is already accounted for. But you move forward with abandon, as if risk was just a secondary effect of action, a consequence, not its primary guide. He gestures for you to take your turn. A cause. I play my way. He smiles. Indeed, indeed. That is all I seek. You move your piece. This locks you into being reactive, if you don't mind me saying so. You're responding, which means you're being led. He leans back to consider the board. This place, it mirrors you, Sleeper. It is also reactive. It was born from a crisis, the collapse of Solheim, and ever since it has been reacting without any central guiding principle. No analysis, no calculation. Just look at our refugee crisis, for example. It is all reaction, all risk-taking, and little risk calculation. At first I found the chaos enlivening, especially when trying to track its outcomes. But now I find it exhausting. He laughs. It always amuses me. It always amuses me that this place is literally spun from the rim. Below this very stack of habitation blocks is the most important control facility on the eye. Spun from the rim, he laughs again. What better metaphor could you find for disorder? His face drops. But why am I telling you that? That facility is precisely why you are here. He smiles an unsettlingly warm smile. You feel a shiver through your body, as if something has changed in the air. What is this? No words come out of your mouth. You feel removed from yourself, watching from behind frosted glass. Your eyes dart side to side. Inertia sets in. Castor is still smiling. The risk you are planning to take here, Sleeper, is not yours to take. Castor's tone is unshifted. He speaks as if this is still some casual conversation between passing acquaintances. You are leaping towards a chaotic outcome with no respect for risk. You see, calculating outcomes, that's my specialty. That's why I am here. I was hired as a conduit for risk, as a collector of data that might pertain to its arrival. He removes his glasses to clean them, and you see something flicker across their surface. A shimmering stream of characters. This system, this station, is already theirs. Solheim's collapse meant a corporate fire sale. Assets changed hands. My employers, Senate bought out the entire system, and for the past decades have been its one valid owner. Fuck. He polishes his glasses diligently. But to possess this system, the H1 system, he pauses, Helion to you, well, that is a matter of risk, of how much force, how much cost, how much conflict a clearance would take. He replaces his glasses. That risk must be calculated against the favorable outcome. In short, how much is this place worth to us? For a long time, the answer was nothing. H1 could offer nothing that would warrant the risk. But the markets change, the demands shift. And Senate we analyze, we follow, we respond. He puts his glasses back on his face. H1 is about to become the most important system in this part of the galaxy. He glances around. The lone CAN channel operating with a range of 7 or so newly The lone CAN channel operating within range of 7 or so newly surveyed resource-rich systems. The frontier town that feeds the gold rush, so to speak. So, here we are, reevaluating the risk. Reclaiming our property. Starting up the CAN channel and clearing the way for what comes next. He sits back looking at the board. He gestures. Your move. You will kill thousands. You manage to force out the words. Castor looks a little surprised. I'm an analyst, Sleeper. I will do nothing. He shakes his head. Senate as a corporate body will take the required actions. Of course, I do not need to explain myself to you. But in the role as an analyst, in my calculations, I see great promise in you. In your ability to enter systems, to shift them to your will. Not every Sleeper has this capacity. I assume you know that? He smiles. It truly is a wonderful happenstance of SNARP's technology. I imagine even they are not fully aware of it. He takes his move, claiming another of your pieces, and as you watch, you realize the inevitability of his victory. I will make you an offer. Come willingly or come by force. This station will collapse, we can be sure of that, but your ability to work with data, well, for an analyst, that is very intriguing. He pauses to push his glasses up his nose. Very intriguing indeed. He glances around. Come with me as a collaborator or as a prisoner. Consider the risk. On one hand, almost certain death. On the other, a possible future. Analyst or not, you must see it. Speak now, Sleeper. The game is forfeit. You must see that. He holds out a hand. You are of value. You are needed. You feel a slight release in the inertia that grips you, enough to allow you to speak, to respond. You realize that you are already in Castor's hands, that you cannot move from this place if you wanted. Sleeper, you hear the familiar voice above the crowds. Sleeper, I'm here. You are unable to turn your head to see Peak, but you notice Castor's eyes following them as they come up from behind you. Then you see Castor's eyes glance down towards his hands, concealed beneath the table. Sleeper! Peek comes around the front of you and waves a hand in your face. We were supposed to be meeting, remember? They glance at Castor. Sorry, am I interrupting something? You cannot speak. Castor shoots Peek a wide smile. Hello! You must be a friend of Sleeper. You watch one of his hands lift. Close to his body, some dark shape concealed in it. A weapon. You try to scream to shout, but Castor's attention remains partially on you, and while it does, you can do nothing. Peek glances at your static form. What's happening here? Sleeper! They put a hand on your shoulder. Are you okay? As Peek stares into your eyes, you see Castor behind, his hand lifting, the dark object unfolding. And in the split moment it does, you can feel his attention shifting to Peek, shifting away from you. As you do, you feel the inertia lifting, and you know this is the only moment you will have to act. Shove. You lurch forward wildly, like a sprung trap. Your head strikes Peek's chest and then carries them back into Castor. Somewhere, some digital screech is echoing through the walkway. They tumble together and on the floor, and the object in Castor's hand skitters across the floor. You realize the screech is you. You get to your feet, grab Peek, and run. You run as hard as you can, the scream chasing you down the walkway as you shove the residence. Peek dragged behind. You run from the cold grip of whatever power Castor had over you, the signals that locked you into this body of yours, that broke your connections and crawled up your spine. Eventually you stop, both you and Peek collapsing, heaving, breathing into the cold metal floor. When you're able to speak, Peek asks you to explain, and you tell them everything Castor told you, about Senate-Stat, about their claim on the Helion system, their reactivation of the CAN channel, the Helion system's growing importance. It flows out of you in desperate gulps, unable to believe your own mouth as you hear these words coming back at you. All you feel is the need to push back against the cold hand on your shoulder, the vast cold eye that is turned to look at the system, the ghost limbs of corporate control that are extending their reach. Peek is quiet for a long time. Then they speak. We have to finish this, Sleeper. They meet your eye. We have to complete the seeding of the systems. We have to set Gardner free. You're right. If the choice is between Gardner and these people, I will choose Gardner every time. Their eyes are cold and steely. I would choose anything over them. You stand together. The final control facility is here. I found it. Peek looks at you grimly. I can take you as soon as you are ready. Time's almost up. This is the only shot you'll have. Well, they're equivalent. That's a double minus. We'll go with the single minus if this fails. Yeah. We take those. Let's stop by the battalion. Bantayan? Hold on. Very important. Feed the kitty cat. I still haven't processed that last scene. Woof. Woof, y'all. thought he was sketchy, but I didn't know he was that sketchy. Sleeper, here. Pete calls to you from across the flickering corridor. An elevator to the core. He smiles. This is it. It has been a long set of cycles hunting for a path through the derelict layers of old Solheim's offices and workshops. But finally, here it is. The path down to the core. You rush over to peek. As you do, the doors grind open, their dingy-looking elevator flickering as they do. You look at Peek, who nervously gestures for you to get in. Step in. The elevator bounces a little, but seems stable. You glance back to see Peek watching you nervously. They follow you in sheepishly. Just a little nervous. Peek reaches over and punches the button for the lowest level, flinching a little as the doors grind close. The elevator sets off, screeching through the floors as it does at an unsettlingly loud volume. I'd feel more comfortable if we spoke. Peek raises their voice over the noise. It's not going to be a short trip. How's Esh? Peek pauses. I was thinking more like small talk, elevator talk. They sigh. She is packing. They rub their eyes. Once Esh has set her mind on something. Well, you know her now. You know what I mean. The screeching of the elevator fills the silence. Can she be persuaded to stay? I doubt it. I really do. Peek looks down. She left her life behind to take me out of XPR, out of Hawthorne. I can't imagine her settling down for just anywhere. I can't imagine her settling for just anywhere. To be honest, I can't see her letting me stay either, but I guess things have changed. Back then at Hawthorne, I wasn't in a place to know what to do. I was desperate. I was ready to run. But now? Peek pauses. Now I feel done with that. Done with denying my past, my history. If I ever want to feel complete, to feel settled, don't I need to somehow resolve the person I was with the person I am now? Peek goes quiet, and you do too. There are too many possible questions, too many possibilities before you. It just seems easier to get on with the task at hand and leave the consequences for later. The elevator screams to a stop, and the doors ping open with a strangely cheerful beep. You glance at Peek. Time to move on. You both walk out into an atrium, still lit by some ragged-looking light panels on the ceiling. Once simulating a summer sky, now degraded into a flickering blue and white tapestry of glitches. Peek crosses quickly, making a beeline for the large doors on the far side, where you can make out a fading sign in massive peeling letters. Central Control. You follow, helping them lever open the partially powered doors until the motors kick in and they spring to life, thudding open. You and Peek tumble through, across the damp metal. As you stand, you are greeted by flickering lights, thousands of them. A vast, cylindrical stack of servers, processors, and transmitters dominates the center of the room, its flickering LEDs reflected in the scattered puddles that surround it. Despite the decay, the warped panels, and water leaks, it is still running, just as it has for decades and decades, since the station was first spun up. You wonder how long it has been since anyone has been in this room. You exchange wide-eyed looks with Peek. This place is a still-living piece of history. What now? Peek takes a handful of mulch out of a small bag. It glitters with spores. Now, we seed this place. They cross to the server and start packing the mulch deep into the machinery, pushing fistfuls deep into gaps in the paneling, laying it across hardware. As you watch them doing this, you feel a tug, a thread pulling at you. You approach the vast piece of cylindrical hardware that Peek is stuffing mulch into. You run your hands across its plated metal surface and watch the links blink in response. As you pass, you hear a whirring, like a physical disk drive starting up. Listen. The whirring shifts alternating, speeding up, slowing down, and as you listen, you hear it modulate into a voice. Sleeper. You freeze. You are here. For a moment you are afraid, but something in the tonality of the voice is familiar. Navigator. Another drive spins up, and another, giving the voice a richer, multi-tonal sound. I had forgotten what it felt like to speak like this. The drives skip. There is a certain quality to it, a certain physicality. What are you doing here? The drives squawk in unison. Did you imagine the flux, the shadow protocol? That they were just a problem for the people on this station? A high whining begins. They are all more dangerous to us. I have been in hiding once more, jumping from network to network to avoid the shadow, as it eats up my nodes. A low rumble. I had thought my hiding days were done. For the moment, I have found myself a safe haven here in the core. The shadow has yet to breach this facility, although that is a temporary state of affairs. The rumble stops. My predictions do not point to good outcomes. We have a plan. You explain to Navigator about Peak's plan, about Gardner's resistance to the shadow, and how by seeding key systems you will protect them from its advance. The drives hum thoughtfully as you speak. A desperate plan, the drives were, but appropriate given the probability of total collapse. I am not sure what will be worse for us, hiding from the erasure of the Shadow Protocol, or the assimilation of the Gardener. The drives pause to reset. But we owe you our freedom. I will do what I can to guide the Gardener into the systems you have seeded. A pause. It is correct to do so. Be careful. The drives squeak an affirmation. You have notable persistence, Sleeper, even with such poor probabilities of success. I will be curious to see the outcome. The drives squeal, the motors giving out. This cannot be sustained for much longer. Go, I will be fine. A final squeak of affirmation, and then the drives skitter and slow to a halt. You step back from the towering cylinder, staring at this vast piece of Solheim's hardware. This whole place is built from ghosts, you think, from old protocols and company hardware, from engines that drove decades of corporate expansion. Is the eye proof that they can be shifted, bent, forced into new configurations that allow for new ways of living? Or is its inevitable collapse proof that these engines of expansion can never be anything other than a corrupt foundation? It seems to depend on who you ask. Done! Peak's shout breaks through your line of thought. The heat and damp should help the spores germinate quickly. If we are lucky, there is enough time for some growth before we reconnect the greenway. They glance at you. That's it. All the facilities seeded. They sigh. We either just ensured the eye's survival or stuffed a whole lot of soil into one of its most important computers. They laughed weakly. Two typos. I normally am not going to say something, but 2 typos. Shall we go? They start to head back towards the elevator, towards the doors and the elevator beyond. Take one last look. You wait for a moment, following the blinking lights. You wonder what might be tucked away in such a structure. What secrets it might hold, what histories. It's an intriguing prospect, but while you watch the lights, you realize something. If the eye is to become anything more than an offshoot, a temporary structure, it must form its own history, its own story, stronger than anything that came before. Unlocking these Solheim secrets won't do that, but the persistence, The stubborn drive to survive that is in the veins of every person in this place, that will. And that is what you're trying to save. You turn back on the core and follow Peak back into the elevator. As you ride the car back up, Peak raises their voice over the screeching. I'm going to the Founder's Gap to finalize the connection. The moment I'm ready, I'll let you know, and we let the gardener out. The sooner the better. Peak furrows their brow. If we wait until the final cycle, it'll be too late. If you want to help speed things up, go work with the flotilla. We can't make the connection until we know they are ready to go. Peak swallows. Unleashing Gardener could affect them too if we aren't careful. And what happens then? Peak shrugs. I don't honestly know. Maybe Gardener takes over the station. Maybe they don't even react. They sigh. I can't think about it any longer. You ride the rest of the way in silence. When you reach the top, you go your separate ways. But before you do, Peak embraces you, burying their face in your shoulder. You stand there together for a moment, spinning with the eye, moving relentlessly towards an unknown future. And then they let go and slip away, the pressure of their hug fading like a bruise as you begin to leave. I have so many upgrade points, y'all. Hold on, before I go check that, because I don't think I'll be coming back this cycle. So important. Can I buy scraps? No. Can I buy scraps from an empty dock? So I'm going to have to use stabilizer. Okay. Okay. What am I going to have to do? Supply hauling, berth refitting. Berth refitting. I didn't stabilize. Oopsie doopsie. Do I have a little bit of clearance here? No. Okay. I'll miss one action. I am, I think, way ahead. Based on the writing, I think I'm way ahead of the curve in terms of urgency. As you stop to rest in one of the Pilgrim Seed's cavernous bays, hopping up to sit on a supply crate, you hear a now familiar bass? Familiar voice behind you. Sleeper. Glad you're here. Saul's suit hisses as he clanks up towards you. I knew you'd help us out. We're sure to appreciate everything you do for us. Building up to something? Saul shoots you a sideways look. See, that's what I like about you, Sleeper. Straight to the point. No messing. He smiles a sly smile. Saul settles beside you, flinching a little, but making himself comfortable on the crate. Seems the word got out this way or that. He nods towards the welders a little way off, one of them wearing shipyard overalls. We've had people flowing in from the eye, looking for a place. In truth, it's more than I thought, Saul sighs, which means more mouths to feed, more bodies to house, more people to protect. Can we do it? Saul frowns. We'll do what we can, as always. I'm not sure any of it will be enough. Can be enough. He looks down. We were supposed to stay here, not keep running. Saul waves away the thought. Don't listen to me. He gives you a sideways glance. Just a tired old man. He stretches. I have something to ask, though. Something new? Saul shakes his head. Not so much. Old matters, mostly. With all these evacuees, we need a change in plan. He shrugs. Pilgrim Seed can't do it alone. We need the others to help out. We can carry them, house them, but that's all. Now you settle down the folks from Ember Step, and they sent their supplies. They sent us supplies grown in those dust houses of theirs. If we could get more, he nods to himself. And then the song crews, he rubs his chin. What we need from them is scouting and security. We don't need that docking access of theirs, but with some careful scavenging, they could be our fleet. These folks, they already know you, Sleeper. You earned their trust already. He puts a hand on your shoulder. I sent my requests out, and they seem to be complying, but I need you to out there making sure the work gets done. Time is our greatest enemy now. Saul stares into the distance. I need you out there speeding things up. Honestly, you ask too much. Saul frowns. Maybe I do. If so, no one is making you heed me. He shakes his head. I still don't understand you, Sleeper. He climbs off the crate, his suit hissing as he does. Think of it this way. Either way, you won't have to deal with us much longer. Either way, you won't have to deal with much longer. He smiles his uneven smile. Unless, of course, you were planning to come along for the trip. I'm staying. Saul nods. I understand. Saul waves a hand and starts off towards the bay's entrance, the crackling sound of the welding quickly covering up his clinking suit. You watch the workers, the shipyard contractor chatting among them, already looking like he belongs. You push the thoughts of escape, of home, and of the future to the back of your mind and get up. There's always more to do. You better head to the other ships in the flotilla to see what can be done. Hungry. Gotta go cook up some gear roll caps. And I need to remember to use a stabilizer, and I gotta feed a kitty cat. Sorry, cook up some matsutake. I have an active scene. Oh, probably back up there? Yeah. Okay. Hi again, Aki. I knew you'd come. Aki greets you outside the dust house, her eyes as bright as always. You are very welcome here as always. Good to see you, Aki. Aki smiles. And you, Sleeper. Aki puts a hand on your arm. Walk with me. And she guides you past the dust houses. You look inside and see other members of the crew working in the orange dust, planting and tending to the steppe ecosystem. We are to be the suppliers for the evacuees, I am sure you have heard. We will put the dust houses to use. She leads you past the dust house where the dust is less, the orange glow not as bright, the air a little more clean. We are adapting slowly, but we are adapting. We have to produce food, clothes, necessary things for the journey ahead. She smiles. The plants of the steppe are once again sustaining a population, and that makes me proud. Aki stops at a half-empty dust house, scoured of its sand. It is being filled with mulch. We brought this from the Greenway. She stares at the green and brown, a strange sight even to you, now that you're used to the amber dust of steppe. I admit it is hard work for us. We are not familiar with these plants. Can you help us? Aki meets your eye. I will do my best. Aki looks away. Of course, I'm sorry. She furrows her brow. I know that the eye is suffering, that it is at risk. I know what that is like. Thank you. I wish I had a lesson to share with you from our loss on step. She shakes her head. But for the moment, I cannot see what that might be. She gathers herself. If it gives you meaning, the work here is steady and worthwhile. But if you do not have time, she smiles a weak smile. I will not blame you. Hold on to your memories, but not too tightly. She pauses. Sadness will not sustain you. She falls silent, and you both watch the work in the dust house for a while. You can already see a greening fringe of moss of the mulch in the dust house, the first signs of new life. Will you soon be like the people of Steppe, leaving behind a home? Or will you be stubborn and hold your ground, despite what it might mean? You wait a little longer with Aki, the moment a welcome suspension in time, a rare moment in this rush towards an end. You glance at Aki as she puts a hand on your shoulder in solidarity. After a short while, Aki sighs. It is good to see you, Sleeper. Perhaps we will see each other again before we depart. She walks away, fingertips brushing against the glass of the dust house windows. Aki turns back for a moment, as if she wants to say something, then thinks better of it, and turns away. The docking access is in chaos when you arrive. The staccato burst of welding torches, the shouts of crews gathering, the rapid flow of supplies and kit from dock to dock. You can tell already that news of the flotilla's imminent departure has reached this place before you. Sorry, just needed to check something real quick. It wasn't important enough to merit further discussion. Come to join the Exodus, Sleeper? Peter approaches you from one of the working crews, a smile on his face, and a lightness in his step you haven't seen before. Are you enjoying this? Peter shrugs. Refitting the ship, building systems, improvising solutions. That's what half of us live for. Are you really surprised? Or not at all. Peter laughs. Seems you have learned something about us after all. Peter eyes you. I suppose you are here on Saul's orders again? He winks at you. Nothing Ember's Hearth like to do more than ordering people around. I'm here by choice. Fair enough. Just your timing seems to always be a cycle or two after we get some requests from the Hearth ship. He shrugs an exaggerated shrug. Must be a coincidence. Well, Saul has it lucky anyway. His request for us to dismantle the Axis and be the vanguard for the flotilla's onward journey to the starboard belt aligns perfectly with our plans. If we can build our escape and make the Hearth ships think that we are complying with their orders at the same time, then it's a 2-in-1 for us. Peter shakes his head. Those idiots will never see it coming. You're leaving the flotilla? We are our own flotilla, Sleeper. Peter looks away at the busy Axis. Why aren't we aren't going to tie ourselves to Heart and Step any longer. Why would we? 'Cause they can provide food for you? You dorks? Peter looks down. Look, nothing against you or yours, Sleeper, but we have to get out from under the shadow of Step and Song. Aren't you from Song? Step and Heart, right? And this is the time. Peter grimaces. We won't let the flux catch us again. Not a chance. And for the first time you see fear in his eyes. Want to help us make that leap? Grab a torch, talk to a crew. You're welcome to it. Peter sniffs. Every person here is free to prove themselves. Let's see. Peter nods. Just a stop on the road, Sleeper. I'm afraid that's all this was. Peter glances out past the docking axis, through the outer windows to the stars beyond. A lot of space out there for those willing to take it. He looks you in the eye. I hope you'll be around before we go, but if not, he smiles, stay strong. And with that, Peter thumps you on the shoulder and heads back to his crew, with a purpose, a direction visible in every step of his rapid stride. So y'all need help. Y'all need help. Y'all. Our timer. Y'all need help. Okay. It's Hearth, not Heart. My goodness gracious. He's forgotten his own situation. Just gonna finish this one out. I'd rather help Song? The dusty one. They just keep coming. Perhaps the Flux event scared enough people that they really believe the eye will collapse. Perhaps they are just sick of Havenage, or the Council's infighting and the hardliners. Or perhaps they just want to take a chance at some new future, a place that is anywhere but here. Whatever it is, the evacuees don't stop. They come on the flotilla shuttles, on their own ships, however they can. You've seen so many faces pass that they are almost meaningless now, a parade of features that seem both familiar and distant. You've been helping people, lifting bags, bringing in supplies, directing them to the berths you helped build. Some of them recoil from your torch, still unfamiliar with sleepers. Some of them recoil at your touch, still unfamiliar with sleepers. Others treat you with pity. Some with hate, snatching back their bags and storming off. Still, you help. Still, you carry boxes and bags. Nothing can stop you. You don't look for Saul. You know he is busy, just like you, trying to make this thing work. Trying to fit as many people as will come onto the Pilgrim Seed. You know you will see him before this is all over. You keep working, but there is something in the back of your mind, something eating away at you. You try to push it to the back of your thoughts, but it keeps coming back. The eye is over. That is the thought. That the eye, even if the Flux doesn't get it, is on its way out. How can it survive when these floods of people are leaving it behind? It's a thought that troubles you because it makes you question why you have held on here so long, in a place that seems so temporary for so many people. Are you just a stubborn idiot, someone who didn't get the message? Or are you strong, committed for lasting the storm, for seeing the collapse coming and facing it head on? Because there is something you are sure of now. This place, like all places, is temporary. And as each face passes you, each family packs up and gets on board the Pilgrim Seed, it feels even more temporary, even more fragile. Which means it either desperately needs protecting, or it desperately needs to be left behind. The choice is yours. Re-roll. Hey. Intuit and interface, can I get cool stuff? Interface. We gotta get that cryo. We have so little of it. Feed the sleeper. Feed the kitty. Before I forget. So important. There should at least be a 1, so let's do this. Yeah. Good. Same thing. 3 and a 4 are the same. Yeah. You sit in one corner of the dust house and inspect your work. This dust house, the one where plants from the greenway and some of the steppe species intermingle, has become your favorite. The moss and dust sharing the space in curving terraces. The pale knots of steppe silk freckled with yellowing lycol symbiotes. It is a hypnotic arrangement. You look down and see the intertwining of fungal threads and dust-caked roots, and feel a little glow of pride at what has been achieved. You hear the entry lock of the dust house hiss open, and assuming it is Aki's turn to greet her. Sleeper, I should have known you'd be here. Riko smiles her warm smile, leaning on her crutch. You must be one of the most green-fingered people on the station. Riko! Now, has it been so long? She smiles a wry smile. No need for any drama. Love to see Riko. I met some of the steppe refugees in the Greenway. They were gathering plants and I confronted them. Turns out they were very friendly. She smiles to herself. Aki was very apologetic, but I told them they were welcome to anything they liked. She told me I'd be welcome to come see, and, well, I thought I'd take her up on her offer. She looks around the dust house with its strange hybrid ecosystem. Have to say, I'm glad I did. You know Aki? A little, she pauses. She's a fine botanist and an even finer conversationalist. 2 rare qualities on the station in my experience. Riko limps over to you. She holds out a hand. How about you take me on a tour? You take Riko's hand and walk her around the hybrid dust house. You show her how the steppe silk knots help provide a strong base for fungal and lycol growths, and how the dust mixes with the spores. You show her the different species of steppe tubers, and the way they feed the soil with nutrients that help herbaceous greenway plants thrive. She nods along, her eyes bright with ideas. She stops after a while and gestures for you to sit together. I know something is happening with the eye, Sleeper. She looks out at the plants. We all felt the flux event hit, and everyone is talking about what's next. I came out here to figure something out, to understand what I might do about it all. You glance at her and see the glossiness in her eyes. And I think I have decided. What you have done here, what Aki and the other steppe refugees have done is incredible. A whole new ecosystem built from this strange, artificial, changed remains of 2 worlds. But I am not of 2 worlds. I am of the eye. A tear runs down her cheek. Like it or not, I am entwined with the station. I am old growth. I don't have that much time anymore, and it seems to accelerate with every cycle. She frowns. It blurs together, separates, overlaps, comes back to me in strange ways. The time I do have, that's time I want to spend on the eye, in the greenway, watching things grow. She wipes her cheek. One day, I'll lie down in those fields and not get back up. She smiles, the tear tracks down both cheeks. And when the green takes me, I'll be so glad. I'll miss you. Riko smiles. The feeling is mutual, Sleeper. She wipes her eyes and turns to you. That's enough of me blubbering on about it. She furrows her brow. What I want to know is, what are you planning? I'm staying. Riko smiles. We all have to get to know ourselves, Sleeper. To know what it is that drives us. I'm sure you'll decide to act in the manner you know. But you also have to ask yourself why it is so. She places a trembling hand on yours. Don't neglect that. Oh, she suddenly lifts both hands. Don't let me forget this. She reaches into her coat and pulls out a transparent bag of sporing club heads with carefully preserved root systems. I'd like to plant these. If you go, you'll need them. She looks down at her feet. And if you don't, well, maybe another sleeper will benefit. She frowns. I can offer that at least. Thank you. She nods. Don't thank me. These are yours by right. Rico stands and limps over to a pile of mulch. She delicately takes the club heads out and beds them into the soil there with precise, expert hands. You should go, sleeper. I'll be a while. She calls back, not looking away from the job at hand. See you around. She says it casually, but there's a note of finality to her speech. Goodbye, Rico. You turn and leave the dust house, cycling through the protective lock, back into the cool quiet of the ship. Aki is waiting for you. It's beautiful. She is looking through the observation window at the green, and the green reflects in her eyes. The plants look happy together. She spots Rico with her hands in the soil. Ah, the botanist came. She shoots you a look. A friend of yours? More than that. She nods. She speaks beautifully about the Greenway. I should go in and welcome her. She pauses. Are you leaving us? Yes. Aki sighs. The first of many goodbyes. She suddenly embraces you, wrapping you in her layers of rough cloth. She pulls back. I wish you a steady step and a clear path. She smiles. A farewell for my world. Godspeed. She smiles. I like how that sounds. Godspeed to you. She nods and smiles one last smile before turning and entering the dust house. You watch as she walks inside, Rico turning with a smile to greet her. She kneels beside the old botanist, and you see her pointing to the club heads, asking questions. You are unable to hear them, but despite that, you can easily imagine the measured, even tone, laced with excitement, that Rico is using to explain the club heads, the Greenway, and much more. You turn, leaving them to their conversation. Your step is light despite the burdens you carry, and the smile Rico and Aki were sharing is somehow still on your lips as you depart. I don't know if I fed the cat. I think I fed the cat when I got up, but I'm not sure. Nothing wrong with giving a cat a little treat twice a cycle. Little treat for a kitty cat. Oh no. Oh no. What bad dice I've gotten. That's better. I'm gonna eat now. Am I? Did I get any scrap? I got a scrap. Yes, I am gonna eat now because I have some scrap. Because I can repair myself. And in fact, I'm gonna repair myself now so I don't forget later. And I'm gonna feed the cat now so I don't forget later. And maybe I'll do it again later. That's fine. There we go. We're only halfway through the time, but it sure feels like we're wrapping up, huh? Can I get anything from Engage or Engineer? I think I can get scrap from Engineer. Yeah. Endure. Engage. Could get energy. I'd rather get scrap. I'd rather have the chance to get scrap. Little water. Get a little water. In case I need a 6 for something. I might. There might be a hack. The docking access is little more than a shell. Everything that could have been pulled from its interior, every arm not used for docking, has been cut away. What remains is a Spartan void with patchwork of flooring that allows movement. Piles of unusable material are tucked away in corners, but almost everything else has been cleared out. You haven't seen Peter since you last spoke, and now you are realizing that you probably never will. There are plans to be made, escapes to plot, the shadow of Hearth to escape. On the cycle the flotilla leaves. These ships will disperse soon. The moons of Ember spinning out on different orbits. The chaos has become a quiet diligence now, as the time for departure is so near. Crews cross the axis from ship to ship at speed, bringing supplies or advice. Perhaps meeting up to discuss travel vectors in hushed tones, or to debate why they haven't left yet and whether they should. Among these singer crews, recognizable for their specialist clothing and often shorn heads, you see the occasional refugee. A paying passenger or a replacement engineer or pilot, perhaps, come from the eye to seek fortune with the singers. Most of the crews have 2 or 3 of these additions, some more, and you can't help but wish that, whatever the reason brings them to throw their lot in with the singer crews, they will have safe passage. You feel a strange attachment to these citizens of the eye, setting out for the first time. And then one of them catches your eye, crossing the axis with a crew, carrying a large bag and a nervous look. Who is it? Who is it? Tala. You freeze for a second. What is she doing here? She glances around, feeling your eyes on her, and catches your eye. Her face brightens immediately. Sleeper! Tala mutters something to her crew and rushes over, dumping the large bag at your feet and embracing you without thinking. Good to see you. She pulls back. And you. She smiles, but then it quickly fades as she realizes the context in which you are meeting. She sheepishly glances at her bag. Sleeper, she pauses. She pauses again, folding her arms defensively. I'm going to the starboard belt. She waits for your response, nervously. Why didn't you say? She sighs. You remember me mentioning my family, Sleeper, my brother? You think back to your gear roll blurred conversations in the back of the Bantayan. He came here with me, with my family, when we were little. Just after we left Sinza. She bites her lip. He left when we were both teenagers. Jumped on some spacer crew headed for the starboard belt. She sighs. I'm an idiot. She shakes her head. And I'm going after him. She looks down, not sure what to add. That makes sense. She looks at you. It does? She laughs nervously. I'm not so sure anymore. I really don't know if it makes sense or if it's the right thing, but ever since I heard that was where the refugee flotilla was going, well, I couldn't stop thinking about him. What happens to the bar? Someone will have to run it. She leaves a long pause. I mean, I can ask Francis, he'd be happy to, or one of the others, she blurts out. And of course, if you're living with the flotilla or someone else, it'd be totally okay. You wouldn't need to say yes. It's no pressure. It's fine, whichever way. I was just thinking, I could run the bar. Tala nods, smiling. I think so. I mean, you can take a second, but, She glances at the crew she was walking with, who are chatting a little way away. There's not exactly much time. So, considering that, she grabs the key hanging around her neck. The key to the Bantayan. Do you want to do it? Yes. Tala leaps forward, and embraces you again. Thank you, Sleeper. I couldn't be leaving it in better hands. She pulls the key from around her neck and places it around yours as if presenting a medal. Remember to lock up, especially the back. And remember to empty the still if you're leaving things closed for a few cycles. And she stops herself. I won't be gone forever, of course. She blinks away a tear. I can come back and check in. Maybe once I find my brother. She pauses, unable to finish that thought. She smiles at you, and you can see the weight lifting off her shoulders. Her eyes already drifting towards the crew, the ship, the next big thing. She's ready. I better be going. She nods at the crew nearby. Not a good start to keep my guys waiting. She lifts the bag onto her shoulder. She looks down the curve of the eye towards the overlook. Thanks again, Sleeper, for everything you've helped me with. She nods. I wouldn't have been able to leave if I hadn't made things work here. She adjusts the bag. Dad wouldn't have let me. See you around. She nods. Hope so. Then Tala turns, heading back to the crew who will carry her to the starboard belt. You watch her go, and despite the departure, it is hard to feel sad about Tala. You know her energy will carry her forward, and you hope her brother is somewhere on that bright path. You hold the key in your hand, the metal still a little warm from Tala's body. You turn it over in your fingers, thinking about how it feels like a tool and a burden. You can still lock up and leave, you figure, but now that will feel like breaking something fragile. And if you stay, well, who knows what this little metal promise might grow into. So good. No active drives? Do I just wait? Is anyone wanting to talk to me, maybe? Let me check on here. I need to blink quite a bit. I have not been blinking. I've been reading. I know there's no active scene. I'm trying to see if there's any blinky business that might catch my eye. Excuse me. I guess I should work a shift. Thanks for giving me a shift, Tala. Sure, it's safe to play Tafla and that I'm not going to run into a character I don't want to meet here. Don't have a scrap, so I can't stabilize. That's fine. Feed the stray again, of course. I think it is just a waiting game now. So I can certainly buy this. I'm not going to use it because I'm not going to let my condition get to that point. But yes, I would love to buy some scrap, actually. Don't have much else to do. Evidently. Oh, I hope I'm not messing this up somehow. But I don't have any drives, so I think I'm doing fine. Aha! Peak's slate chirps in your pocket. You take it out. A message. The connection is ready. Meet me at the Founder's Gap, Greenway side, Peak. You clench your jaw. It's time. You find Peak waiting near where you first met, at the entrance to the docking tunnel for the Founder's Ferry. They are leaning beside the wall in the flickering light, and you realize now how very different they look from when you first met. There is a darkness around their eyes, a sense of exhaustion to their pose, but also a solidity, a sense of purpose and self-knowledge. They look concrete, for want of a better word. Solid. Sleeper. They spot you, and a small smile crosses their face. Glad you came. I wouldn't be anywhere else. The smile grows. Crunch time. They shake their head in disbelief. Let's go. The break in the connection is up ahead. They walk away from the docking tunnel into a ragged, half-crushed corridor that descends into darkness. They poke their slate and a torch flicks on, lighting the way ahead. As you descend through the layers of the broken edge of the eye, Peak talks, filling the silence. I had hunted all over this part of the eye to find the point where the connection was broken. They run a hand along the buckled metal of the wall, stooping under the angled ceiling. This hole, the gap, got knocked in the eye when Solheim collapsed. It's impossible to tell who did it, but my guess is they tried to scuttle the eye. If Solheim could keep hold of their fancy new station, well, no one could. Peak ducks through a fractured passageway with hanging wires like vines. So this place has always been on borrowed time. I've managed to weave together the old connections and run a new patch down to where the main line still runs through the remaining ribs of the rim. They smile. Just like keeping those old XPR platforms running. Esh would be so proud if she'd bothered to help. As Peak goes quiet, the corridor opens out into a wider, twisted passage with compartments on either side, thick with wiring. Here, this is the connection point. You can see where Peak has levered off a panel and hooked up a thick cable to the existing hardware. As thick as a tree trunk, it snakes off into the dark ahead, its yellow rings making it look like some huge and exotic serpent. You did all this? Peak nods. It was an interesting challenge. Plus, it helped me keep my mind off things. Peak smiles a weak smile. There's a lot I'd prefer to not think about. You both stand there, staring at the point where the new cable meets the old one. The ends separate, fitted with multi-pin male and female connectors embraced inside a metal framework with a scissoring mechanism. Bringing them together, sealing them, and the greenway will be connected to the rest of the eye for the first time in decades. Peak shifts their weight onto one hip, pushing their hair out of their eyes. I feel like this should be more momentous, like there should be some ritual or ceremony. They pause. Or someone should stop us from doing this crazy thing. It isn't crazy. Peak nods. I mean, I'm not being funny, Sleeper, but this whole thing is crazy to me. Peak shakes their head. Leaving Hawthorne with Esh, joining the flotilla, coming here, meeting you, the Flux, the Shadow, everything. They laugh a hollow laugh. So I suppose this is at least consistent with all that. They take a deep breath. Okay. They look at you with mild panic. They hold both sides of the supporting framework, ready to scissor it closed. Here we go. Peak wrenches the framework closed, and the connectors thunk together with a sound that echoes down the ruined corridor, into the dark on both sides. Both you and Peak wait with bated breath, unsure what it is you are waiting for. Do you expect the eye to suddenly stop spinning or lurch on its axis? For the power to go out, or a shockwave to run through the corridors of the rim? You meet Peak's eyes, and suddenly they burst out laughing. What are we waiting for? They put a hand to their forehead. I feel like we just planted a tree and aren't expecting it to burst out of the ground. They shake their head. Yeah, Totoro's not here, so that would just be silly. But you feel it. You feel a flow like a stream that has been released from a cave and rushes out into the sunlight, crystalline and clear. You swear you can hear it running in the wires like water, like rain, like steam. It doesn't roar or rattle, but it rustles and writhes there, like liquid roots. Peak sees the look in your eyes and stops laughing. You can see it, can't you? You can't see it, not with your eyes at least, but it is everywhere. And now it is out. It can't be put back in, that much is clear. You imagine the rim of the eye like a sponge, like soil soaking up the gardener and the chorus, the gaps filling with a burbling, constant, growing life. Peak stares at you, waiting for something, anything. Gardener is free. Peak nods slowly and closes their eyes. They go to speak, but the words fail them. Suddenly Peak's slate chirps. They jump and scramble for it, almost dropping it in the process. But when they stare at it, a look of confusion crosses their face. What happened? Peak's mouth falls open. It's Esh. They swallow. She's leaving. They look at you with panic. Before you can speak, they have turned away and are moving back up the passageway, back towards the entrance. Nothing I can say is going to stop them. They don't turn, don't respond to your silence, and you watch their silhouette, lit by their slate's torch, disappear rapidly around a corner. You take out the slate Peak gave you and turn on the torch. The wires all around look like pale roots in this harsh light, and you turn away from them. They are gardeners now. You work your way back through the corridors, retracing your steps. You imagine Peak, panicked, running through the cordon, towards the cordon, realizing that their greatest fear has come to pass. You wonder if they will be able to persuade Esh to stay. If Esh is going to leave, you think, then the flotilla must be leaving too. The thought makes you shiver in the darkness, and you push it away. You're not ready. You focus on avoiding the hanging wires, the low ceilings, and make your way back out into the lit corridors of the Founder's Ferry dock. Castor is waiting for you. Fuck. He holds up his hands. Now, sleeper. No need to fear. He raises his eyebrows. I understand now it was my mistake to try and force you. A miscalculation. I don't have words for you. I won't hold you here, sleeper, Castor stands aside, but I wish to speak. I'll hear him out. Castor's nods. At first I thought that, if you'll excuse the turn of phrase, taking possession of your particular talents was the opportunity. He smiles a broad smile. But you are more than that, and I understand that now. Your arrival on this station, your ability to touch the networks, this makes you the very definition of a wild card. He touches the rim of his glasses. Senate stats analysis, my analysis. We never could have accounted for you. This system, the Helion system, is about to experience a significant change, about to open up to Senate stats bailiffs, Conway's claimants, and every industry and element an active CAN channel brings. Yet this very cycle you let another wild card free. Gardener. I have to admit this development makes me afraid, Sleeper. It makes me afraid what an intelligence like this will sacrifice to protect itself, or what atrocities it might commit through madness. And yet, Castor's eyes glint, what a compelling object such an intelligence is. Let me protect you, mark you out, keep Senate from eliminating by force or legal expediency you, as they will with every other squatter on this ring. Castor clasps their hands together. And in exchange, when Senate comes for this place, you facilitate the handover. You calm the protocols. You give us the gardener. Never. Castor takes off their glasses and polishes them. Disappointing. You begin to leave. As you approach, he speaks quietly, an urgent whisper. I do not wish to see you lost. You are of great value, and if you ever wish to see that realized... You push past, ignoring him, and his voice fades. The last you see of him is his slow nod, perhaps a mark of resignation, or just another deferential gesture aimed at manipulating your response. It doesn't matter either way. You're done with him. You head towards the cordon, Peak and the flotilla in the forefront of your mind. You arrive into chaos at the cordon. The final shuttles are leaving the ramshackle docks that have formed along the edge of the gap during the flotilla's stay. As they do, groups of evacuees push on board, hoping to be among the final people to escape from the Eye. The fear created by the Flux event became a series of rumors, and those rumors have driven many out of their homes. Others have staunchly doubled down on their position on the Eye, refusing to accept any gossip of a second collapse. You are unsure what you think? Is collapse a certainty? Will Peak's actions this cycle have changed anything at all? You're tired of these questions, and instead set out to look for your friends. Are we going to see our friend the doctor? You quickly spot Peak and Esh at the far side of the chaotic bay. You quickly make your way through the crowds, slipping between the gaps in the rushing evacuees, stepping over bags and luggage. Progress is slow, but as you approach, you can hear their voices over the crowd. You try to push closer, but there are many evacuees gathering around them in their shuttle. You have made your decision, Peak, and it puts you against me. Esh is standing with one foot on the boarding ramp, while Peak argues with her. The evacuees are eyeing them, eager to intervene, but intimidated by Esh's evident strength and attitude. Esh, it doesn't have to be like this. Peak looks desperate, tear tracks already on their cheeks. We can find a way. Esh shakes her head. I have always protected you, Peak. I have taken you under my wing. But I understand that you are not mine to control. And you have chosen to be here and not with me, despite everything. I've chosen to stop running, Peak cries out in frustration. You can choose to stop running too. We can stay here and try to live. Don't you remember what it feels like to live, Esh? Esh turns away. I remember what it was like to live on Hawthorne. What it was like to be worried for your safety every cycle. To live under the control of my mother, of the administration. To work to maintain something that no one wanted, no one needed, so that our corporation could maintain a foothold in this system. You talk as if this place, in the very same system, is any different. What is there here but the same grind for other masters, for employers, administrators, for those who gain from our struggles? There may not be a corporation controlling the Eye, but there is control. There is power and action here. So what then? So what then? Peak shouts. You run from anyone or everyone who could ever be close to you in search of freedom? In search of some perfect place where no one has power over you? Peak is crying openly now. I want to be part of something, Esh. even if it is broken and suffering, even if it cannot be free. Esh pauses and takes a deep breath. She nods, her eyes closed. This isn't Hawthorne anymore. We aren't tied by our childhood or by our shared need to escape. We are both just people in this system. She opens her eyes. I release you, Peak. You are free of me. Esh, please. They hold out a hand. There is a life here if you want it. Esh turns and smiles at Peak, her eyes wet now, too. Then you live it for me, Peak. I can't. And she climbs up the boarding ramp, the evacuees taking their chance to climb on board too. You watch as the shuttle closes its ramp, lifts off, and leaves the bay. The crowds are dispersing now as they get onto their shuttles or say their goodbyes and move back into the main part of the cordon. You push past the last of them to reach Peak. Peak doesn't turn as you come closer. Sleeper. Esh is gone. She chose to leave. Peak nods. I've known her my whole life. They wipe their face. But since we arrived, we've been going different directions. They turn to face you. I'll miss the briar. But she'll serve Esh well, I know that. Sleeper. The shout takes you by surprise as you turn to see Saul coming across the bay towards you, the last two shuttles loading up behind him. He reaches you, his suit hissing as he does. Can't believe you'd make an old man run across this bay to get you. He pauses to take a breath. The singers have gone. They left at the start of the cycle. They broke away from the flotilla. You smile as you think of Tala, safely cradled with one of those singer ships, on her way to the starward belt, and hopeful of her reunion with her brother. Godspeed, Tala. What are you smiling at? Saul interrupts your thoughts. They forced our hand. We have to leave now. Saul shakes his head. If we follow close enough behind, maybe they'll end up being our scouts anyway. I reckon any hostile spacers out there will give them a wide berth. Pilgrim Seed will need a little time to make our way out of the cordon, but I'm heading back now to get her started. Thankfully, the step ships will be sticking with us, so we'll be plenty well supplied for the journey to the belt. He pauses. Anyway, I didn't plod all the way out here to tell you that. Saul looks between you and Peak with a raised eyebrow. It's now or never, Sleeper. I'm good to my word, and I kept a berth for you, but this is your last chance to take it. He scratches at his beard. Make a call. You glance out at the flotilla beyond the bay, beautiful in the sight of Helion's sun. You think of the long journey to the starward belt, of the people inside the Pilgrim Seed, of the possible futures that await. You think of the people here on the Eye, of Peak beside you, of the Bantayan, of Tala, and the key that still hangs around your neck, of promises and possibilities, not even a choice for me. You open your mouth to speak and realize this is the final time you will make this choice. You have to be sure. I'm staying. You say the words, and the moment you do, the weight of it all seems to descend on you. You stumble a little and then stand straight, refusing to be crushed. You feel a tightness in your chest and a haze blurring your thoughts. Saul nods. Good luck, he sighs. You'll need it. He grips your shoulder and meets your eye. In the haze, his pitted and rough hand feels so real, so detailed, that it grounds you. And then it is gone. And Saul goes with it, quickly moving to the waiting shuttle. As he does, you watch, unable to speak, your whole body pulsing. And then another hand falls on your shoulder, and it grounds you once more. You turn to see Peak's bright eyes. Let's go, Sleeper. You nod, and seeing how unsteady you are on your feet, Peak puts an arm around you and steers you towards the entrance to the bay. As they do, you hear the roar, feel the wind as the shuttle lifts off and angles towards the flotilla. You don't turn. Instead, you keep your head down and focus on each step. As you do, you feel Peak beside you, holding a little of your weight, and you holding a little of theirs. This is how it will be for many cycles after you both leave the bay and head back into the eye. You will both hold things for each other, remind each other of the choices you made, remind each other why it is important to keep going despite the moments when it seems impossible. You will keep each other going. That support will be vital when the second flux event hits the eye, when it knocks the entire free spoke off the power grid, making the whole station lurch with a sickening motion, when it cripples systems and corrupts processes, leading sections of the station to go dark or start venting oxygen, when holding on is all you can do, when the world seems to be coming apart around you. And yet, somehow, the eye will persist. Systems will resist total collapse in ways that will seem inexplicable to many, but to you and Peak, they will signal the awakening of a new force within the station. That new force will bring with it new challenges and new possibilities in equal measure. Strange growths will be reported all around the station in the wake of the flux event, fungal crusts pushing through pipes and wiring. The eye will go wild and fecund? I know it basically means wild and covered with mushrooms and such. I'm going to say fecund. Becoming a station of increasing unpredictability, prone to a seasonal rhythm of spore clouds and sudden growth spurts. There will be a strange and unsettling beauty to this paradigm shift, as the greening of the station turns it from a corporate ruin to some altogether new assemblage of biological and mechanical structures. Rico will take on this challenge with an energy that seems impossible for her age, and until her final day, she will delight in the new mysteries the eye and its gardener produce. And in this new era, as this new era consolidates around the station, you will find yourself in the Bantayan's mocycles, working to keep the place alive. The cycle where you invite Emphis to come make use of the kitchen will go from a one-off event to a regular occurrence, and soon the Bantayan will be filled with spacers eager to try the best preparations of the station's now abundant mushrooms. And on occasion, after a long shift at the Bantayan, you will hear the sound of the stray mewling, and you will crumble up some food and sit and watch the cat eat, as if it is the only thing in your world that matters. However, into all this newness, the bad old ways will still intrude. Senetstat, frustrated by the eye's resilience, will begin to send more physical threats, and supply ships and traders will suddenly stop arriving, stopped by a blockade of corporate militia. Life on the eye will be punctuated by wide-channel broadcasts from Senetstat, stating that legal precedents and quoting deeds of ownership, staking a claim on the system. Meanwhile, Havenage's hardliners will fizzle out, losing their grip on the council. In their wake, Helene will spearhead a series of reforms that will scale back Havenage's overreach, returning them to the caretaker role they had always intended to fulfill. Hell yeah, Helene. As the cycles roll on and the threats gather, new broadcasts will join them, sent by Conway Extractions, making counterclaims on assets within the Helion system. And many on the eye will grow quiet, losing their appetite for debating these political machinations as they tilt inexorably towards a corporate war. And ever on the eye will spin, growing now in strange ways, haunted by strange new growths, and hosting cultures of increasing resilience. As the Helion system descends into crisis, you will find comfort in the fungal patterns, the familiar conversations, the spices and the smells that will accumulate around you as your body continues its unavoidable decay. They settle around you like a veil, and in time it will be impossible to see the eye without seeing its many variants and versions, pasts and potential futures. And this masking of the world will mark your approaching end. In one cycle, far from now, That accumulation of memories, of tastes, of people and places and moments will be the last thing you let go of. But for now, there is only you and Peak, arms around each other, walking slowly out of the bay. Two figures born of crippled systems linked together, continuing despite your origins. And in this frozen moment, you focus on only the next step, because that is the only way you have learned to persist. And to persist is to believe that a future, any future at all, is possible. Absolutely incredible. Absolutely incredible. Hell yeah. Whew. Ten out of 10. Game of the year again. I don't care. Game of the year again. What a game, though. What a game. What a game. But wait, I didn't get an achievement? I didn't get any gamer score? What was this all for? It's a joke. I'm going to leave the other ending as an exercise for the audience. I might look it up on my own, but you should play this game. You should absolutely play this game. Could not recommend it more. Even if you watched all this video, you should experience it on your own. Please. Oh, I cannot wait for the next game in this style. I want to play 1,000 games like this. Please?